Today is Friday, July 30th, and this is Tokyo Daily, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics show from the Toronto Star. My name is Brendan Dunlop. Canada, golden in the water, and still have golden dreams out on the pitch. I'll get to Canada's nail-biting penalty shootout win over Brazil in women's soccer with Laura Armstrong in just a minute. Let's start in the water. Canada's women's 8 rowing team won gold for the first time since 1992. Dave Feshuk said yesterday, there's so much pressure on this rowing team, they lost a lot of funding after a one-medal showing in Rio in 2016. They sent the largest rowing team Canada's ever sent to an Olympic Games, 29 rowers in Tokyo, 10 boats. They pulled out a bronze on Thursday and a gold on Friday. Dave was at the event, wrote another piece in Friday's Toronto Star about Canada's rowing success in Tokyo. That women's 8 gold also broke the United States gold medal streak in the event, which went back to Beijing 2008, so Canadians can celebrate that one over on the Americans. Rosie MacLennan won gold in trampoline at the last 2 Olympics. She battled injuries throughout the pandemic in preparing for these games. She actually tore ligaments in her ankle just 9 weeks ago, which was revealed on the broadcast by CBC analyst Kyle Schufelt. It hampered her drive, obviously, and her hopes of a three-peat ended with an incredible 4th-place finish. Her performance was exceptional. Check out Rosie DiBano's piece in the Toronto Star all about MacLennan. 4th place is also where Penny Oleksiak finished in the 100-meter freestyle relay. It was so fast. Just want to read you some numbers. 5 years ago at the Olympics in Rio, Penny won gold in the women's 100-meter freestyle with a time of 52.70 seconds. Okay? In Tokyo, she set a Canadian record by swimming a personal best 52.59 seconds in the same event, and it wasn't enough to get on the podium. These women are fast. Australian Emma McKeon won gold with an Olympic record 51.96 time, and Hong Kong's Hani Siobhan Bernadette took silver. Just incredible what Canadian women have done in the pool, and incredible what women are doing in the pool. The bar has been raised. Penny Oleksiak does have another chance, though, at a Canadian record 7th medal, as she is in the 4x100-meter medley relay. That will go on Sunday. Track and field has started. It's a long week. And if you're a soccer fan and you went to bed upset after watching Canada's men's team lose in heartbreaking fashion to Mexico in the Gold Cup semifinal, if you woke up early to watch the Canadian women at the Olympics, you were rewarded for that. Because for all the drama through 120 minutes in penalties, Canada came through, and their Olympic dream is very much still alive. Very happy to talk about that game with Laura Armstrong from the Toronto Star. Now, anyone who follows Laura on social media or listen to Headers and Footers, the incarnation before this show, knows that you support England. But look, penalty shootouts can be fun, Laura. You can come out and be happy with the result.
I have to say, though, that in the Dutch-England penalty shootout, which we'll get to later, there was an Arsenal player who missed their penalty. So clearly it's not a good time to be an Arsenal fan supporting international soccer teams who go to penalty shootouts. But yes, this penalty shootout ended much better than the last one I watched. I wasn't crying at the end. So that was a big step in the right direction.
Well, for any Canadian that also supports England, seeing Christine Sinclair saved on Canada's first penalty shot must have thought, oh God, here we go again. Because with the most goals in international soccer, man or woman, you would have thought Christine Sinclair would have put that in.
If you were going to bet on one of the players that stepped up, one of the players in that 11 that was still on the field to score a goal, you would have put money on Christine Sinclair. It was a no-doubter. And then she goes and she misses the penalty. She has the penalty saved. Let's give Barbara credit, the Brazilian goalkeeper. The penalty was saved. It was not a great penalty. Barbara barely had to make a couple of steps to her right to really save this penalty shot. It's very, it's interesting. We've had a lot of conversations about Christine Sinclair and penalty taking in the international game over the last couple of years. She's deferred to Janine Becky a couple of times in open play. So it's definitely been one of those things where we haven't seen Christine Sinclair necessarily take a penalty in a while. I mean, she still does it for Portland, and maybe she's taken some in international friendlies, but on the big stage, more recently in one of the round robin games at this tournament, and then in the Women's World Cup in 2019, she didn't take those big moments. So it was interesting when she won the toss, she wanted to shoot first, she took the ball, and then she saved it. I think everybody in Canada went, what? But you know what you have to give credit to her teammates for. I mean, they all stepped up. They all had really clinical penalties. I mean, Jessie Fleming, Ashley Lawrence, Adriana Leon, Vanessa Gilles, they were the kind of penalties that like you practice and you hope to heck that you can do that in a game, but that's not always the case. So her teammates really stepped up for her here today. And I really do think that Christine Sinclair, of all people, felt it and understood it. I mean, she was in tears after the game. And she certainly, I think, really appreciated her teammates stepping up for her this time, as she's done for them so many times in the past.
We've talked a lot about the mental fortitude of these mainly female athletes at these Olympic Games who've been shining. All 11 medals have been won by Canadian women. Stephanie Labbe, the strength and fortitude to get through the 120 minutes after having to leave the first match with an injury. She almost didn't get to the penalty shootout.
No, she didn't. She came up big a number of times in that 120 minutes. I think that if you were going to have a team who was going to win it outright in open play, whether it be in the 90 or whether it be in the 120, it was going to be Brazil. I just think that they had the better of the chances. Canada, I think, had a good game this game, and I certainly think that we're not going to talk a lot about the 90 minutes or the 120 minutes because it's going to be all about the shootout. But Stephanie Labbe certainly kept that team in the game on a number of occasions, and she threw her body at the ball. And I mean, this is a woman who was, 2 games ago dealing with a rib injury, had to miss a game in the round robin, and you saw her sort of touching sort of her chest area, her rib area, a number of times when she went down, and she kept getting back up. So it's pretty incredible to see the way that she managed to sort of defy, I think, pain. Like, I think that she was probably not comfortable when she was playing, and then for a goalkeeper to sort of have to keep her head in the game and ignore the fact that maybe she's not feeling at her best, and then go out and save 2 penalty shots, which were good penalty shots. It's pretty incredible. And I mean, certainly she was the man of the match for Canada today. Woman of the match, I have to say, woman of the match.
Sheridan was warming up on the touchline. Did you think she was going to come in and take the gloves for the shootout?
I think that no, I didn't think that she was going to take the gloves for the shootout. I think that, Stephanie Labbe got crunched by Davina in the end of the match. So, I mean, if she was injured, maybe, but Stephanie Labbe just had a look in her eyes today. I mean, it felt like she wasn't going to be pulled from another game, no matter if she wasn't feeling necessarily 100%. And Stephanie Labbe is the kind of keeper that you want, I think, in net for a team when you're going into a penalty shootout. She is very good at reading penalty shootouts. Not to say that Kailen Sheridan isn't, and Kailen Sheridan once again would have been a great backup for Canada, if she had to be pulled into that moment. But as we've learned recently during the Euros, you probably shouldn't put players in at the last minute unless you absolutely have to, going into a penalty shootout. So I think that Stephanie Labbe was the right choice there for herself, for Bev Priestman, and ultimately for the team.
Were you surprised that the match was so tight leading through 120 minutes? I mean, they know each other well. They played each other twice this year in the She Believes Cup. Brazil won 2-0. Then there was a scoreless draw, but it was their A team against A team, so I can discount that. Were you surprised that the match was so tight and that it got this far?
I wasn't surprised that the match was so tight. That's exactly what I was expecting. I joked yesterday that I probably didn't need to wake up at 4 a.m. I could probably wake up at 6 just to watch extra time. This is sort of what I expected from this team. I mean, they're not the same team, but they certainly know each other very well. They know how to deal with each other's characteristics, and they know how to sort of manage each other's strengths and sort of impress upon their weaknesses. So I certainly think that I'm not really surprised by it. I would say that I thought that Brazil had a stronger group stage than Canada. And I think that, some people might argue that some of the teams in that group stage were a little bit easier overall, but I mean, they had to play the Netherlands. Zimbabwe was a really incredibly interesting team to watch this time around. And China is never necessarily that easy to roll over. So I did think that Brazil was impressive going through. And I mean, for me, as a fan of women's soccer, it was hard to watch a player like Marta go out at the end of this tournament. I mean, Marta has done so much for the women's game, and similarly to what you would have watched if Christine Sinclair and Canada was eliminated today. It would have been hard to watch because Christine Sinclair has done so much for the women's game, and you just don't know how much longer these players are going to go for. So I kind of feel like we were I don't want to retire Marta because I'm sure she has years to play, but it's possible we don't see her at the next Olympics 3 years from now. So I think that it was hard just to see her bow out, but watching her with her teammates, some of them crying and her just banging on her chest after the end, I thought, that's a great sign of leadership. She's shown it on the field, she's shown it off the field. She's broken tons of barriers throughout her career, and I do hope that we continue to see her. But if not, she made her country proud, I think, today.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. Marta's such a soccer icon, and Brazil, the women's program is greatly improved because of her. And with Coach Pia Sundhage, they're at a point now where Brazil will be kicking around at this level for a long time. You look at the balance in competition, or the gap, I should say, between the top teams like the U.S. and Japan and Germany at times, and the bottom half of the top 10. It's closing across the board, and Brazil is soaring up that ranks because I think largely in part the system and the way that Pia Sundhage has invested across the board in the women's game, not just in the women's senior team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, Brazil in general has had a sort of similar narrative to Canada. And can it be greater than this one player? Can it be greater than Christine? Can the team be greater than Christine Sinclair? Can the team be greater than Marta? I mean, maybe. And then you had players like Diana Matheson with Christine Sinclair and Formiga with Marta. And I certainly think that you're seeing some transition in both of those squads, and I think that you're seeing them learn to grow. I think Canada might be a little bit ahead of the Brazilians in that sense. I think that the Brazilian team is a little bit older, so that they're just at a little bit of a different time. But I certainly think that both of these teams are going to continue to be top 10 teams in the world. They're going to continue to develop, and I think that both of their goals, as stated by Canada, I'm not necessarily sure if it's been stated by Brazil, but it should be that they want to compete with the top teams in the world, with the United States, with the Netherlands, and I think that the goal is for them to get there, and at least they're going in the right direction.
The Dutch almost knocked off the United States, which would have been incredible. If one penalty shootout wasn't enough for you, you got two. What did you think watching that? Did you think the U.S. might drop it?
Well, I was watching with my Dutch mother, so it didn't go that well in the Armstrong household. But I definitely thought the Dutch needed to get out of that game before penalties, because Alyssa Naylor is just a brick wall when it comes to penalty shootouts. And when it reached penalty shootouts, I thought the United States, had it in the bag, frankly. But I thought that the Dutch, over the course of the 120 minutes, was the better team. I think that, there were better instances from the United States, and there had been in the round robin when they dropped points that maybe you weren't expecting them to drop. But I certainly think that they're more beatable than they ever have been, which is a very interesting place for the United States to be in. And it's a very interesting place for Canada to face them now in the semifinals on Monday. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this all goes. I mean, I think it's going to be a game that's all about managing emotions. I mean, the US has had Canada's number so far over the course of forever. And there's definitely going to be a lot of comparisons to the semifinal between Canada and the United States at London 2012. We're going to be talking about that for the next 3 days. But I think that Canada needs to sort of forget that kind of thing. And they need to realize that this United States team is probably not the best iteration of a United States team that we've ever seen. So if you're going to take a win, now's the time to do it. And you just need to focus on playing your best game.
Very well said. You're going to be talking about 2012 a lot over the next few days. For the next 4 days, you'll definitely be writing about it a lot. I'm excited to see that game very much so. What else have you enjoyed watching at these Olympics?
I love the swimming. I watch swimming every night. I'm excited to start paying attention to track now, but swimming has been really, really fun for me. I love seeing Penny Oleksiak sort of come back. We saw her tweet today that people shouldn't be sorry for her finishing fourth last night in the freestyle, because she's not feeling sorry for herself. She set a Canadian record and a personal best. Like, that's pretty darn good. And it's been really impressive to see sort of the maturity that she's shown, once again being sort of a star of these games after having so much pressure on her back after 2016. So I think that, in a games where we've talked a lot about mental health, Penny Oleksiak has certainly shown, resiliency, and the fact that athletes, when they take care of themselves, can certainly come back, which is great. And another thing that I've just noticed is that I think everybody's really happy to be there. Like, this Olympics is not without its issues. Nobody's saying that for sure. But I was watching swimming last night, and I was watching the South African swimmers and the American swimmers, celebrate together. And Lily King is an American swimmer who has said, I'm not always necessarily that nice in the pool. She's very competitive, but she certainly, was celebrating with her counterparts. And I think it's just a matter of these athletes have really waited a long time for this. Some of them weren't sure if it was going to happen. And when it comes down to it, the moments of the actual competition are really wholesome and really fun to watch.
Well, I've really enjoyed reading all your work in the Toronto Star, Laura, so thanks so much for coming on Tokyo Daily.
Thanks for having me.
Track and field has started. It's a long week, but it was a short event for Canadian medal hopeful Melissa Bishop. She finished 4th in the 800-meter in Rio, missing out on bronze by 13/100ths of a second. But she failed to qualify for the semifinal heat on Friday, so she won't get to avenge that. You can read all of the Toronto Star's coverage all across the Toronto Star's media platforms. Bruce Arthur, Dave Feshik, Rosie DiMeno are in Tokyo. I'll speak with Bruce Arthur coming up this week on Tokyo Daily, and I'll also talk with Doug Smith as basketball heats up. The U.S. men's basketball team under a lot of pressure. We'll talk about the Canadian women as well as they chase for a medal. Thanks for listening to Tokyo Daily. Remember, you can watch it on the Toronto Star's YouTube page every single day during these Olympic Games, and subscribe and give us a like wherever you get your podcasts. I'll talk to you tomorrow.